Okay, we're now officially going to begin, and welcome to the December 8th Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board of Managers meeting. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So Steve, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the public comment. And I know the reason that we're starting a little late, we had somebody who was here for this, but then found out because of COVID restrictions couldn't participate. But we will end up circling back with that gentleman because it's been a while since we've had somebody come to the public comment, and we welcome that from the public. So we're going to circle back with him. So there isn't anybody else there online I can see. We don't see anybody from the public, so we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. I'm going to see if anybody, I know Maggie, we're going to add additional check item to, I tell you what. Why don't we do that, Maggie? I'm just other old new business. I can't think of where we would do that. We never have anything. So we'll do a 4.6 because it's going to be an additional check item that we would like included.
For the public hearing, or what do you mean?
No, we're going to do, no, this is just a check. So Maggie, whatever you want to call that.
Or you could amend the claims list too to add that one check.
We can have time or we can pass it right then and there. We don't need to. So let's just bring it up right then and there and deal with it.
What is 4.6?
So Maggie, what do you want to call this? Check to the
Approval for check to title company for supplement outlet easement.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody else have any additions, deletions? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So
it's going. We have a motion, we have a second, motion second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Frank, are you not?
Aye.
Awesome, thank you. That's a 5-0. All right, we're on the first item that we have is a public hearing for a 2020 final levy. Maggie, you can introduce this for us?
Good, yes. This is, so a point of question too, even though there's, because we're doing a public hearing, got it, sorry. There's a required public hearing to pass the final survey or the final levy amounts. Does Diane usually typically read this word for word? I feel like.
Nope.
No.
Nope, it's just sort of setting up, and maybe I can do that, so.
Actually, yeah, if you could, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I do it once a year and only a couple of times again, but anyway, we're going to end up having a public hearing in order to see if there's any input from the public on our, before we vote on our levy for 2020.
You have to close the regular meeting. A motion to close.
Yep.
And a motion to open. Okay.
And I think I'm just going to look for an opening the public hearing and do it that way. So
Okay.
with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
The motion is second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anybody online that would like to speak at the public hearing for the 2021 Prior Lake Spring Lake watershed levy? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So now we're on to other old new business. Our first item is our programs and projects update. This is my document. What's that?
We open and close the hearing, but take no action on it.
No, that comes out, we have an item on.
Oh, you have it separate. 4.3.
3.
all right, give me 1 second.
Could have.
We don't have to choose the text. It's not an image. There's no statute. Actually, that's what we would have to.
Who said that?
You should list the public.
Okay. Been seen her for a long time.
Okay, who is up first, Maggie? This will be your opportunity.
It's Janie.
Okay, Jamie?
Hey everybody, it's Jamie. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you, yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I wanted to update you on the recent water quality report cards. Maggie, if you want to go to the first screen there. Yeah, so we recently updated the water quality report cards. For those of you that don't know or haven't heard of the report cards before, this is a report that we do every 3 years. And the report card is set up kind of for the public, for somebody that doesn't maybe know all the technical terms about water quality, in order to understand like the condition of the lake that they're interested in. And so as you can see on this report card, the upper portion with the text, that gives out some quick facts like the size and the depth of the lake, and then a summary of the water quality, including some of the projects that we have done in the past or are planning to do in the future, and things that maybe have impacted water quality or improved water quality. And then the main portion of the report card is in the middle there, and on the left we have the 3 main water quality indicators: the phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and clarity. Kind of the quick way of describing those is the phosphorus is the food for the algae, the chlorophyll A is the measurement of how much algae is in the water, and then clarity, of course, is pretty self-explanatory, how far down you can see into the water. The risk to water quality, that just summarizes how that indicator affects water quality. But the meat and potatoes of this report card is really the next 3 columns: the grade, history, and trend. So the grade takes into account the past 3 years and kind of gives that a grade based on how often that the water quality samples are meeting the water quality standard, which the standard is set by the state, and that's kind of the goal that we want to reach. If we exceed that standard, we are put on that impaired list, which is not where we want to be. So for example, this is Upper Prior Lake, and this includes, the grade includes the 3 years of 2017 through 2019. So during that time, it kind of, the samples hovered right around that standard, going up a little and down below it a little bit, so kind of in the middle. Chlorophyll A, most of the times it did not meet the standard. And then clarity, most of the time or some of the time it did. So that's kind of how that grade works. And then the history just shows the last 10 years, the trend over the last 10 years. And by looking at this, there's a red line, that's that water quality standard that that I explained earlier. And the goal here is to be below that red line in all 3 of these parameters. So the lower below the red line, the better. And then on the very far right, the trend is just a real simple explanation for maybe people that aren't really used to reading graphs, to just explain if it's improving or declining, or maybe there's no trend. So yeah, and just to clarify too, the history is the last 10 years, but sometimes we don't have 10 years worth of data, so it will have the dates that it includes in that column title. So we have 8 report cards. I'm just going to briefly touch on each of them, and if you have questions afterwards, certainly we can ask at that time. But before we move on to the different lakes, is there any questions about the report card layout itself?
Yeah, Bruce?
Yeah, Jamie, I read each one of those. They were very good. Very,
Thank you.
got a lot of good information, but I'm just curious. We just did the alum treatment and we got some good test results from that, but I think on the report it said they were not included. Why weren't they?
Yeah, so this report card is done every 3 years. So the last The last report card was 2014 through 2016. Then this is 2017 through 2019. So just to keep consistent, we're going to keep up with that 3-year period unless we're told to do otherwise. But we do include the most recent data also on the website under each lake. So you can certainly see the data there, but that's just not really the intent of these report cards. They're just more of a longer term summary of the water quality. So it might be actually pretty confusing if we did have the results of the alum treatment in this report card, but nonetheless, we will include that with the next report card.
I got it. It's just 3 years, 17, 18, and 19.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, Jamie, so let me ask this, why? So is there something that takes a long time to produce this report card? Why we wouldn't have seen this in January, February, March of this year?
No, well, they do take a lot of time and there's a lot of analysis, but yeah, it was just a matter of workload and priority. But yeah, there's quite a bit of work that goes into it. But yeah, I had a feeling that question would be asked.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we're tracking these 3 metrics throughout the year on a regular basis, and you're updating this in a spreadsheet. Almost get it very frequently, especially right after the algae season. So it would have seemed, and again, I'm not trying to pick on the workload because I don't know what you have. It just seems like this is stuff that we are tracking and managing against. It's one of our prime, goals and objectives. So I'm sort of surprised. I think that's why we're just curious why it was hitting now, and I think why we were off. And
yeah, I totally get that. That's just not the intent of these report cards, is to show the current water quality, but it's more like the trends and the history. But definitely, this is our first time doing this on our own. If you recall, 3 years ago, the report cards were done by Houston Engineering. So they were the ones that actually designed and created them. So this was us like learning how to do the calculations on our own, and then learning how to use the software that this was, Adobe Cloud InDesign, software is unfamiliar to staff. So it's just now, we're doing it on our own. And so it took a while. Now that we have it all figured out, it will be much quicker next time.
okay. So one other comment, when I see the trend and it says declining, I don't know what's declining. Is the grade declining? It looks like actually the trend is going up, so it's not declining. So I don't know if it means the trend is the quality of the water should be worsening, or anyway, just a thought on the language, because I'm not sure what declining means based on what I'm seeing.
Right, yeah, that is, yeah, that's something we kind of struggled with. For one, I guess it doesn't explain that the trend is for the last 10 years, but as I mentioned, the red line in the history column, that's the water quality standard. And right. So the further below that red line, the better the water quality. So, in the history yeah.
Sorry, I understand that
the quality
when you look at the graph that it's right next to, the line is increasing, which means it's getting
yeah.
worse. You see, well, it's right. Just a fusion in terms, and I think the language choices.
Yeah.
And it is an opportunity maybe to
yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So Jamie,
yeah, we've talked about the language for quite a while. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, it's all good. Would love to see the other ones, Jamie, if they're okay.
On the. Yeah, so this is Lower Prior Lake. It doesn't need much explaining. You can see there's a lot of A's there. Basically, the water quality of Lower Prior Lake is always very much consistently well below the water quality standard in all 3 parameters. So you can, and then just quickly looking at the trend, it's basically staying the same, and the clarity is getting a little bit better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Spring wasn't too good.
So Spring Lake, yeah, this is,
Uh,
I don't know what's up with those graphs, Maggie. It's just automatically advancing, isn't it?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I had that problem too. Anyway, so yeah, this is Spring Lake.
6 months
This
ago.
is kind of, yeah, you can see the phosphorus is actually pretty good on Spring Lake, you know, especially since the alum treatment. You can see the phosphorus has dropped and stayed right around that water quality standard, but the chlorophyll A has consistently been above the standard, and then the clarity kind of just jumped up and down depending on when we did the alum treatment and whatnot. But as you know, this year, you know, after the first alum treatment, they are all down below the standard for the first time. But over you know, the last 10 years and pretty much the history of Spring Lake, it's the chlorophyll and clarity has been really bad. All right, next one. So Fish Lake is pretty average all around, you know, C's and D's. The trend is pretty much staying the same for phosphorus, going, you know, getting worse for chlorophyll, but getting better in clarity. It's just kind of just kind of average all the way around. So, but if you look at it, you know, it's some years it's meeting the standard, meaning it's below that red line, and some years it's above it. So it's not horrible. It's just not, it's no lower Prior Lake, that's for sure. So just average. And we can go on to the next one. Buck Lake is another interesting one. We have an F in phosphorus and an A in chlorophyll and clarity. And I don't have an exact answer, but one of the theories is that the Buck Lake channel, everything upstream of Buck Lake is going through a wetland, and wetlands typically do release a lot of phosphorus because the wetlands will go anoxic, meaning that they, you know, lose all the oxygen, goes down to basically zero, and that's when phosphorus gets released. So it's just a more natural phenomenon with wetlands. And Buck Lake itself is more like a wetland than a lake, but there is one small deep pocket that's 10 feet. Most of it's like 3 feet deep. But even with that high phosphorus, we have excellent chlorophyll, meaning hardly any algae blooms, and the clarity is phenomenal. And I kind of think that's because Buck Lake is completely vegetated. The more vegetation you have in the lake, the better clarity typically have. They talk about two different states of a shallow lake. Either it's vegetated and clear, or not vegetated and turbid or cloudy. So I think the vegetation is really helping out here to prevent those algae blooms. And we can move on.
What's our risk like?
Kate's Lake is getting A's all across the board. It's kind of a forgotten lake, and we don't talk about it very much, but it's a really great lake. They actually have loons and otters on this lake. It's just south of 13 by Lower Prior Lake. So lots of lily pads and some rare species of plants, including lotus, which is not very common. So it's a cool little lake if you've never been there. And what do we have next? Pike Lake. So we split Pike Lake into two different report cards. We have Pike Lake West and Pike Lake East. Pike Lake West is the bay that the outlet channel comes into and also exits. So they kind of act like two different lakes, where Pike Lake East is just kind of a stagnant basin without any dilution from other water coming through. So what's interesting with this lake, this side of the lake, is it's actually not not bad, average, but it's improving all around the board too. The phosphorus is getting better and the chlorophyll and the clarity. And I really don't know why, but I thought that was pretty interesting. We'll have to see how that turns out over the next few years. And then next we have the Pike Lake East Basin, complete different scenario, but yeah, F's all across the board. It is slightly improving a little bit with the chlorophyll and algae, but it's not looking real good. This is one of those lakes that just doesn't have hardly any vegetation, and it also does have a lot of carp in there. So I know the Sioux community is working with us. They're heading up the carp removal on that lake because they have the Sioux land bordering the lake. But anyway, a lot of work to be done in that lake. This is by far the worst water quality results that we get comes from this side of Pike Lake. So I think that was my last report card. Did anybody have any questions regarding that? Those, they are all on the website. We will be handing these out at our booths, like back when the world becomes normal, and we have booths at events like lakefront days or community events. You know, this is something that we might put on our table just to kind of get some engagement with the public, and we're also going to try to find a spot at the city hall. Hopefully we're, you know, in the entrance where people walk in so they can pick these up and look at them there.
Jamie, when was the water clarity test taken on Spring Lake? I've gotten a lot of compliments.
2019.
Is it 319?
2019.
Oh, it's again 2019.
Yep.
Yeah, so the grade itself, the letter grade is from 2017 to 2019. That kind of shows the more recent grade, but then the trend is the last 10 years. And again, yeah, that 2010 through 2019.
Question I would have, Jamie, Arctic Lake is not in this report. How big is that lake versus Kate's Lake, or is Arctic Lake in there? I didn't see it.
No.
Can you repeat the question? This was a little hard to hear.
How big is Arctic compared to Kate's Lake?
Oh, I would say very similar. Arctic and Kate's are probably about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arctic Lake, we didn't do it.
So is there a reason that we pick and choose which lakes are on the report card list? I think it's probably where Bruce was going to go.
Well, it's just the lakes that we had water quality data for. We do, the Sioux community does sample Arctic Lake, and yeah, we can get that data for the next time around, but we didn't get that for this time.
Jamie, is it, now that you've updated this once, and I know right now we're only doing this once every 3 years, but the district recently spent a considerable amount of money, and of course staff has been working on project stuff and getting the carp out and all this stuff that may have a positive impact, at least from a lot of the stuff done in 2020. How much work would it be to update these at the end of this year with the new data? Only because we all like to see some of these grades get a little better from some of the investments and the time and effort that you guys have put in. Is it a big deal to update these now?
No, we're currently in the process of writing our work plan for 2021. So if, you know, if it's priority by the board, we can certainly, you know, make time for it and just, we can fit it in. You know, again, we will have other data on the website again. I know I said that earlier, but if you like this format and this is kind of what you would like to see as a report, we can update these more frequently. It's just kind of what we had decided in the past. It would be every 3 years.
Yeah, personally, I think it's a very nice report. It's far more digestible to the public. And actually, even some of us board members, I think it's nice work product, Jamie. And, but I'm still trying to get a sense for how much work is it? Is it like 2 hours? Is it a half a day of work? Is it a week of work? I'm reluctant to have any suggestion with my colleagues about that until I know how much.
Well, and the other thing, just the two main lakes up in Prairie Spring is the ones we did the.
Right.
What,
Oh,
that would be a priority. You don't have to do all the lakes, but maybe those two.
Good point.
First those two.
So look, you've already.
Yeah,
said-
Mike, I would have to get, I can look at that, you know, we have our harvest timesheet and I can actually get those numbers. Jeff and I both work as a team on this, so he did a lot of the data management and, you know, I did more of the report card, the looks and adding everything in. So I can get that for you. I can email you that or bring it up at the next board meeting if you want to find that out. I just don't want to throw a number out there now that it's kind of fresh in our minds, you know, like if we can say, you know, however long it took us, that we know that it won't take that long because we got the process down, so it would be no more than, you know, whatever it was last time. So
I think somebody made a really good point that really the only two that have changed dramatically have been spring and upper. So maybe just do those
Right.
two.
sure, yeah.
But isn't there a lesson to be learned here? So you guys have all said that's a high priority, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And we had it done by a consultant in the first place. Why in the heck did we leave it with a consultant? So we get it done in a timely fashion. We pay a few more bucks, but we save them some time. I don't understand.
Worthy question. And what's the answer to that, Jamie?
For some reason, Frank's voice is really hard to pick up. Mike, could you repeat what he asked?
So he was asking, why did we end up changing from paying a consultant to do this to bringing it to an overburdened, overworked staff? I'll add a couple of layers on that.
Or
Why did we bring this in-house?
Yeah, just because of the cost. It was, I believe, $20,000 to have the consultant whip up. That was 3 lakes. They only did Upper, Lower, and Spring Lake. So it was a significant cost. And so we just made sure when they did that, we asked them to leave copious notes so that we could do it on our end to reduce that cost.
So what did it cost us?
Right.
Because you're not working for free, no one else is.
And we did more lakes.
Yeah.
You know, this
So it's kind of like one of
Yeah,
those
great.
things. You
Maybe we have a conversation how important we think this is
Yeah.
for
Oh, I
us
think
and
it's
how many lakes do we want it.
They're
But
great.
anyway, I think this, yeah, is that what I'm hearing too?
They're great.
So it looks like this is good stuff. We'll circle back with you.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. And if you want, like in 2021, maybe we could add in Arctic Lake and get that data from the Sioux community, if you want to add that one in there too.
We'll circle back on it. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
That's
Okay.
good stuff.
Eighth lake.
Yeah, what's the point of more arguing? Anyway, yes, good conversation. Anything more on programs, Maggie?
Yeah, so one real quick update on the boat inspections. We are going ahead with that again this year, but wanted to let you know that today I had a conversation with the county and they are going to give us $15,000 to be used towards boat inspections this year. So we can either choose to do more inspections or use, you know, take that extra money and use it towards something else. So something we can discuss at a later date, but wanted to let you know that we just learned about that today. So we're pretty excited.
That's great. Well, it sounds like we can use it for the boat inspections. We are looking to enhance that with the new eyelids. Anyway, awesome. Thanks for checking.
Yep.
Anything else, ladies? Oh, cart management.
Just gonna take that one.
Okay.
Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. I have quite a few slides, but I can run through these quickly. I'm going to be giving the update since the last meeting, which will include tracking, radio tag installations, clearing obstructions, working with fishermen, the Northwoods Pond permit, and then a new addition to our website. Okay, next, Megan. Tracking, so the latest tracking was done yesterday on Spring and Upper Pryor. There looks to be a small aggregation in the northwest portion of Spring Lake. This is looking good because it's in a haul area and also where we just did quite a bit of removals. Unfortunately, sorry. Unfortunately, the ice is limiting us to tracking from shore, and since the tags are, many of them might be located in the center of the lake, it just limits how far we can hear. And but good sign there is an aggregation. Okay. Upper Pryor Lake is also showing a small aggregation in the northeast corner, also near proven seining grounds. Just with the thin ice situation, we'll be keeping a close eye and communicating with commercial fishermen and take opportunities as they arise. In November, we added 7 new radio tags to Upper Pryor Lake. It happened to be on the same day that we had a small blizzard. Many of the tags that we found yesterday were these new ones. So it looks like some of the tags from 2018 are starting to either die off or are becoming harder to find. So these ones are much needed for upcoming tracking and seine removals. Another big event that happened in November was marking the obstructions in the seining grounds. We worked with WSB, Jeff Riedemann, Tim Adams, and a diver. So staff and WSB went out and marked a bunch of locations with buoys using side scan sonar to aid in keeping that diver busy, which really paid off in the end because he was getting cold and the day kind of flew by with how much stuff there was to move. Next.
Sorry, Jeff, wrong way.
That's okay. Yeah, we spent a whole day taking tires, logs, blocks, other debris. We either removed it or moved it to a location that was outside the seining grounds. We found a dozen or more of these tractor tires, semi tires, logs, cinder blocks on Upper Pryor and Spring. There was, I think there was a request for more information about who some of the commercial fishermen that we are working with are. So I'll give a brief rundown of who we're working with and I guess why. Commercial fishing licenses. Jamie, can you mute?
Please.
Commercial fishing licenses are
Grabbing beer, I think.
are given out in regions in the state. These licenses can be passed down, and they've been applied to quite a long time ago. So all the locations are already divvied up. Our location in Scott County is run by Don Geyer. That's noted by number 20 on the map. In order for us to get new commercial fishermen to work with us, we passed that legislation, but to be respectful of kind of the standard, the DNR, and to be following DNR standards, Don Geyer needs to give permission to any other commercial fishermen to operate within his area. So who we've been working with historically, and Don Geyer has given permission to, has been Jeff Friedemann and Tim Adams. Their location is kind of up, in Washington County and down in Wabasha County. Those have been the guys who have been out doing open water seines with us and doing these obstruction removals. There are other commercial fishermen near us, but it seems that Jeff and Tim and Don have a relationship that works with our situation right now, and they've made themselves available. Are there questions about commercial fishermen that anybody wants specifics on?
Steve, anything more? Doesn't look like it. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Next. Okay, continuing carp management, we the permission was granted for our Northwoods Pond drawdown. That permit is active for 5 years, but it is conditioned. It has a condition where we basically need to show them that we aren't going to be disturbing Blanding's turtle habitat. Blanding's turtles are an endangered species, and we need to show our due diligence before we can alter the water levels in that pond, or show that we aren't disturbing turtles in that location. To do that, there's multiple methods. One is to have a survey conducted, and that takes time and obviously more money. So that's the update on Northwoods Pond. We got the okay from Don Geyer to ask for our Class C permit for 2021, as well as our research permit for 2021. I'm working with Tony from WSB and the DNR to get those permits secured. And then lastly, Shauna made an interactive carp spotting map that citizens as well as staff can use and update and show where carp are either being spotted or aggregating. It's another tool that we can use from local residents to try and find these carp and help capture them. It's on our website right now. It's on the front banner, and you can check it out. I think that's it from me.
Oh, good.
So we had a question on the Northwood Ponds of the cattails. I can't remember who was copied on it, but Steve, you provided some information on that cattails can be managed when you're doing these drawdowns. So I reached out to WSB, Mary Newman, who we work with over there, also does restoration work like that, as well as AES, to be contracted with the 1217 wetlands. Both of them said that that's indeed correct. You can draw those water levels down and it'll freeze those cattail nets. The problem is that if the water stays too low, it's gonna provide opportunities for those cattail seeds to establish more than they would otherwise. So you also have to match that by drawing it off like 2 to 4 feet, which we don't have the ability to do with the permit that we have. But if this is like a desire by the board, we can investigate that further and have WSD draw a plan for us. We would have to get a new permit from the DNR to allow us to raise those water levels back up so that the cattails don't reestablish after that. That would be like a quick and easy option to do it. The other thing that Mary and AES both mentioned is that they could also do chemical treatments, physical removals of that cattail. Mary specifically pointed out the fact that in a typical year in the Northwood Pond, you don't have more than 50% cover of the cattails. So in her opinion, because she's been out there doing those flight net samples for the carp, she said that she thought it was actually a pretty good wetland. Like it's doing really well. Yes, there's cattails around the fringes, but in the middle of it and the types of fish that she was seeing, she thought that it was a pretty good wetland as it is. So I can investigate it further, or we can talk more about it and get more information. And it depends on what you guys want to hear.
We'll maybe add that to our retreat list if Steve would like to bring that up again. So I think we have a mechanism or a path for us to have a conversation about that.
This is where those criteria would help.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, so back when we were talking about budget, we had the question of, we didn't, use the farmer-led council money. And when Diane and I were talking about it, we talked about cost effectiveness and how the cost share dollars, you find out, like as Troy had mentioned, they run those numbers, like how much phosphorus we're removing, how much sediments. But we didn't have that for cover crops. It's a little bit more complicated to do. So we asked the SWCD staff to provide that information, which we just received. So I wanted to provide it like as a cost comparison compared to our other projects. We already know that these farmer-led initiatives are way more cost effective than many other things that we do, and I just wanted to show that. So as you can see, like the animal treatment is still, or was like the most cost effective thing that we can do to prevent this phosphorus. But cover crops are $31 per pound removed. The catch though that I would like to point out, because I always like to overthink things, is that you see like on the map that some of these cover crops are right by streams that flow right into the lake. So the pounds that you remove from that field are likely going to be realized results in the lake. Where the ones that are further away from a stream source and maybe not directly connected to a stream system that goes to Spring Lake, that $31 per pound is going to go up, because by the time it gets to the lake and filters through some of those wetlands, it's not been realized. If that makes sense. So we have to do a little more analysis to see what actual impact we're having on Spring Lake itself. But to remove that phosphorus from the streams that connect to it is $31 per pound on average, which is pretty.
That's for all of the cover crops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All
we
of them.
spent.
And you're saying it may not be as effective, we're maybe not doing it as effectively as we could. Is that sort of what I'm hearing from the?
No, it's just that, for example, do you remember like the Indian Ridge Park project that we did? It was upstream from Fish Point Park.
Yep.
And
Biofiltration.
so that one removes a certain amount of pounds of phosphorus, but we didn't count that. What we counted was it has to go through a wetland and other things, and the realized reduction that you would have is different than what is directly coming out of that feature.
Yep.
So we're realizing that for the lake itself.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to point that out, that there's a little bit of flaws with doing this direct analysis. And so $31 per pound directly coming off the field, but by the time that field gets to the lake,
Oh,
it's
I see.
another analysis.
So you're saying, these are apples and oranges on this list?
A little bit, but.
Can we normalize that? The word I usually use is normalize.
Yeah.
Do that to make sure, otherwise it's not levelized or normalized.
Yeah.
We're not comparing the same thing.
I gave this information to Wayne, so they could look at that in their analysis.
Yeah.
And so maybe I can have them take a look at that. And
Gotcha.
But it's still pretty.
Yeah, well, yes. Worthy. Okay, anything more on the project stuff, Maggie?
That's it.
Seeing no
So the
questions?
question on cover crops, are we getting more acres each year participating?
Yeah, we're slowly rising it. And now we have a new grant that's come into place, so they'll be getting more dollar incentives. So we were anticipating larger numbers in 2021.
Okay, we are on to item 4.2. That's the resolution to change our bank to Sterling Bank, Sterling State Bank. Maggie, you gonna do an intro for this? Or
Would you like me to?
if you have one, if you haven't, I would.
So
We'll go ahead. I'm not sure. So we are making a change in the banking services that we're providing for the district. We have a resolution. Managers have reviewed and voted to make a change on the banking relationship that we have to get better service. We have a resolution in front of us to officially approve this in a public meeting. So we have a resolution. Frank, are you moving resolution 2345?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have motion and second on the floor. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is 4.3, the final levy resolution. And Maggie, did you have anything for this or?
No, so I
Take a cut?
did not prepare anything, but
Okay.
I'm happy to read it if that's what's needed.
Nope. So I'll do my best and anybody else add in. I hadn't prepared anything, but
I have one quick thing. Does the secretary have the resolution, original copy so we can initial? Which it handed around.
on the banking resolution.
Right.
Good point.
Who has that? Steve, you don't, huh? You do? Tear it up, hand it around. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Nope, that's okay. So we'll go track that down. So officially at this time of year, we do a final vote on the tax levy that we have for 2021. The board made a recommendation for the third year in a row to keep the levy flat with a zero increase. Total levy of $1.794,632, broken out into $166,126 for the general fund, and the remaining to implement the watershed management plan. Typically, this is the time we could actually lower the levy, but we could not raise it above this. But at this juncture, I would then entertain a motion to approve to certify our final 2021 tax levy.
So, second.
We have a motion and second on the floor, and just because this is an important one, is there any further conversation? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And motion carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
What's the initial? Initial?
Oh, once we do a resolution on how we all voted, it's a verification.
That's good, two things to sign.
So we are moving on then to 4.4 permit for the Strauss driveway removal pool project. I'm hoping somebody will introduce this one, Maggie, because I don't have the capacity.
Sure. So, SMSC has proposed a change to the culvert on the Strauss driveway. So that one is on the north side of Pine Lake, where the outlet channel kind of crosses that road. They're gonna have the same elevation that the culvert had. They're just completely removing that driveway and that culvert now that SMSC has purchased the property. It is a pretty cut and dry permit request. And EOR was the engineer on this, so Carl didn't review it, but I don't know, Carl, if you have any other comments on this project before the board has discussion or takes action.
Sorry, Maggie, I'm having a tough time hearing you. Were you turning it over to me or?
Just asking if you had anything for us on this, Carl.
Oh, sorry. You know, like Maggie said, this is really straightforward. I mean, it's just taking the culvert out. It's a nuisance. It's great that it's going, and the channel will be restored to a stable slope and revegetated. This is actually just a small part of a larger project. The SMSC is also redoing the upstream crossing at the Kikiapi camp. But because that is part now of tribal lands, that's not something that the watershed permits.
The only other thing I will add is this is part of a PLOC, and a bunch of good engineers, city engineers who are members of the PLOC have been talking about this and vetted this before it's come forward to us. So
Okay.
a lot of good folks have looked at this and it's in good order. Just as much as I would have to add of any value. Go ahead, Bruce.
I had just one question. Carl, you're the engineer for this project. I mean, I guess you're also our engineer to review, kind of a little bit of a, do we somehow authorize you to go ahead and do the design for this? Or
He did this on behalf of, I believe, is that the PLOC or for the SMSC?
And I discussed this with Diane. If it was more of a complicated project that I couldn't understand, we would have hired an outside engineer to review it because it's such a cut and dry thing.
Yeah, no, it just seems our engineer design and review, so
Yeah.
a little bit careful on when we do a project.
Conflict of interest,
Yeah. Yeah, just wanted to point that out. Normally I'll do that.
Just a point of information. What's the threshold at which we approve permits? Because we don't approve all of permits, do we?
No. So it depends on the project and where it's located. We have bridges and culverts, we have, so this is not big enough to meet our threshold of an acre or more. If it's outside of the shoreline zone, if it's close to like one of our lakes, it'll be a 10,000 square foot disturbance threshold. But because this is passing the PLOC, anything that passes it and any changes get triggered for our permit.
Nice, thank you.
We are working on those rules on which we do require a permit, but that's in queue, but yeah, we're on pause because of COVID, so.
Sure. Thank you.
So,
We need a motion?
yes, we need a motion, sir.
I'm tired.
Okay, I'll make a motion to authorize Fire Lake Spring Lake Water District staff to issue a permit subject to the following conditions that are listed in the memo. I'm not going to read them all.
Number one.
So we would like, I recommend, make a motion to approve option one.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries. Thank you. So we're on then to the mod update. Bruce and Kurt, what's up for you gents?
Why don't you go first, Bruce?
Okay.
Was there an email? Oh,
Well, anyway, it's like my first mod.
What did you say? I didn't, what did you say?
Come on.
This is my first mod conference. You want to do this?
No, go ahead. I'll follow up. Go ahead.
Okay. This is my first mod conference, so anyway, I was kind of, a couple of things to just notice. Why is it a 4-day conference? Which they're only half days, they meet at half days. It's like, why not 2.5 days or, didn't need to be 4. That's just one. There was some interesting, the first day on water management districts, bonding, and funding options. Those are actually some pretty good, and you can go back, anybody can go back and watch them. So the bonding one was interesting because we might be considering bonding in the future and funding grants and stuff. Especially the legacy fund, understanding how that's split up, where areas that we can get into. So that was interesting. Keynote speaker, I've heard him before, Kit Welshland. He's a very energetic speaker, did a good job. Then, there's a lot of sessions. I didn't, I looked at some of them. I'll go through some of them I did look at, but the biggest thing, the regional meeting, then we discussed our region, which is Region 3, we're the metro area. So we discussed the resolutions. Like I was telling Kurt, a lot of these resolutions, in fact, 3 of them got eliminated because they didn't follow the bylaws. They didn't get in time.
And clarifying, Bruce, those were 3 of the ones that we had approved as a board.
No, this would have been resolution 7, 8, and 9.
Others, okay.
So we approved 1 and 6.
Okay.
But they did approve number 2 with the water. I know you're interested in that.
The weights,
Weight stuff.
they approved that. We voted against it, Mike, but the majority approved.
But the one thing I've seen on a lot of these resolutions, which kind of, I don't know, but they're like specific resolutions for, that's an issue in that watershed district, but they're always checking off statewide. And I'm just going, I don't know if these are really statewide resolutions. I think there's a, we really, if we're gonna do these things, like, I think a really good one, the Bowser rules on wetland banks and how they really are very difficult to work with and really punish watershed districts or WMOs or anybody trying to create one. That's a statewide.
So it sounds like there's a reason that we have you as our representative to MAUD, that maybe there's something we need to. We need to work on, Bruce.
Well,
So you see an opportunity to fix something for the state.
I'm just thinking that's appropriate resolution that could be, you want something that's statewide. If that's really, and the other thing I'm thinking about, it's got to be a good one to really for the state legislature to take us seriously. Some of these other ones, I look at and go, man, I don't know. These are somebody's wish list. So anyway, then we did, have the regular vote meeting on Friday. I did look at a couple of interesting ones. I thought it was pretty interesting. If you build it, they'll come. A project on low level dams on Pelican River, because that's kind of my area I grew up in. And Shields Lake stormwater reuse and algae treatment, that was Mike Kinney did that one. So, former administrator here. That was interesting. And then the regional meetings, or we did the regional meeting, and then the final meeting Friday. Where is it?
So Bruce, let me ask you, anything that you saw, learned, did that changed the way that you will operate, or change the way we ought to operate as a board or a watershed? Any good takeaways or?
Well, I think I know where you're going. But
No, that's an open-ended question.
Open-ended? No, I looked at this and go, there's something, I can't, probably did like the virtual meeting because you don't have to sit there the whole time. You can pick and choose. They did actually do a pretty good job with the virtual meeting. So that program went good.
If you missed one, you can go back to it.
And you can catch up on it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So part of it goes that might be the way of the future, because we always talk about driving. I mean, like, yeah, 4 days.
Yeah.
That's okay. Frank and I have been in many conferences. Usually after 2 days, you're like, come on, it's time to go home or something like that. But it's just things like that. They could really shorten this up. I do want to make one point. We did get 2 awards. At the award program.
Yeah.
One of them was Program of the Year.
What was the program of the year?
Program of the Year, our Integrated Pest Management Program, in creating that work group, I believe.
Seize the car.
The car, yeah, we got the Program of the Year.
Congratulations.
Nice job.
And,
All right.
and because of that, Maggie also got employee watershed.
Wow. And we couldn't be there because all of us were.
Yeah.
And the story was, I saw the email, I saw that they were looking for people to, apply for it. So I called up Diane and said, well, why not Maggie? She's done a great job with this cart management program. It's unique. She started this work group. That's the kind of stuff they're looking for. And I think you want hands down.
So, good stuff, but yeah.
Was she the only entry? Is that what she means?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
No, but it's wanted hands down because she's looking for her.
Oh, okay.
Well, good stuff. Bruce recognized the opportunity and saw the fit from Maggie and the worthiness of the work that you've done for us. So thank you to you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, it's good award,
Yeah.
well deserved. No.
All right, awesome. So anything you would add? Anything learnings, value, anything that you get out of this thing?
Of value?
Yeah, anything, seriously.
I guess I'd like Bruce to comment on this too. The 2 days that I was in there, the first one was the election of officers, which was a joke, because I've been to 3 or 4 instances, the same thing happens. They put up the incumbent and they quit close the nominations and they run it through by acclamation. Happened again this time. You were there, you saw it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put your name in, you would let.
Okay,
Are we gonna be serious or
We're
we're
having-
gonna keep joking?
that's my job, to keep us serious and moving. Okay. Hey, what else?
The other one was, these resolutions, first of all, resolutions 7 through 10, where somebody dropped the ball because they were submitted on time. So they got dropped. And the other ones, I think each one of them took a half an hour. It's just repetitive people getting up, saying the same thing. And there was no leadership like you, Mr. President, have at ours. You know, cutting down the jabbering and babbling. Well, you know exactly what I mean. You know, just a lot of wasted time. But I guess I'd like to hear my partner's analysis of going forward.
So here's what, I'm gonna try and ask a little more pointed even. So, these kind of conferences, I go to conferences in my real life. And I find value in going to the sessions. I learn stuff that I take back to the company. So that's what I was sort of asking. Maybe I didn't ask it as explicitly. Are there things learning, and just like you know, that we were doing some bonds, we are likely going to be doing some bonding. Did you learn anything from the conference that you think could help us in the way that we are maybe going to do work in the future? Any tips or tricks on bonding, for example, or anything else in the session that you were in? That's more what I'm after, not a discussion on bond.
I don't think there's.
I thought the bonding, the financing, the funding.
Was that worthy?
Yes.
Would that help us?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend everybody watch that
Okay,
because you can see how the legacy fund works, all these other sales tax. You'll get to see the different pots, where money goes and where we fit in and what they're looking for in various areas. So I can't remember exactly one, but it's definitely on the funding. The bonding one, of course, and I know Frank knows it probably better than I do, but there's certain rules and laws with bonding. You know, you have to pay a bonding fee, you know, there's certain criteria you have to meet. But those are expenses that if we are gonna bond, we need to know that before we make a decision not to.
we know that somebody would help us. Guide.
Yeah,
Any resources you need.
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
but we call it bond counsel or counsel. So
Okay.
it's just good to, they're real brief presentations, but they're very important. I thought they were good.
So I attended the thing pretty much as well.
So we did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I checked out and I realized these two guys were there to go through the Friday session. But it was good for me. It kind of pulled apart the curtain because there are so many things that I had no idea that you guys get involved with. Not that I absorbed it all by any means. I mean, when they kept going through that legacy funds, right? Yeah, 900 million,
Yeah.
what? And who can get it? Some of the information was so detailed, you just couldn't absorb it.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure how relevant it was to us. I'm gonna find out. So I thought it was worth it.
Okay. Well,
Um,
staff's been successful getting grant money.
Yeah,
We've been watching, it's not necessarily a metric, but they're very important sources, so anything more we can learn.
Do we get grant money from Maud?
Not mod, but no, they talk about some of the little pots that are available.
Yeah.
And maybe some tips or tricks on getting them. That is a valuable attribute or a valuable learning for us, especially because I believe we all believe that we are likely to have some pretty big projects and we would be looking for funding. But anyway,
so
I know we're
Bruce and I were-
digressing now, but yeah.
Bruce and I were joking around about, there was a lot of OPM,
Yeah.
other people's money.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the benefits of the watershed coming from the city.
Yeah.
I couldn't qualify for 9/10 of the things. You guys could qualify. And
Oh, I see.
Therein was a great partnership.
Okay.
And there are probably other opportunities the other way around as well.
If you just look at the afternoon session on Tuesday, that's all the finance.
Yep. Okay. There. All right, thanks. We're on to the next item, the new item that we added, Maggie, the 4.6 on the title. Getting the funds for the title.
Yeah, so before, with the Sutton Lake outlet easements, we had issued 2 checks to the landowners, Larson and Sandy. And now we are going through a title company to get a title policy. And they're gonna hold the funds for the Larson easement in escrow, which means that we have to write a check to them. So we're kind of switching it up a little bit. So we're gonna cancel out those 2 checks that were signed before, and we're having one complete check for both the payments to the landowners and then the fees to the title company. So
How much is it?
it is $6,313.
So we're going to be looking for a motion to approve that check because it's not on the claims list and we'd like to get that paid. So that's what we're after. Any questions of Maggie?
So, second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further conversation just because it's a new item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Maggie. All right, we're now moving to the consent agenda, and this is our list of items that we typically pass en masse. Unless there is an item that somebody would like to move from the consent agenda. Seeing any, Bruce?
Just a quick question, we just passed a check.
Correct.
That automatically go to the claims list, do we have to add it?
No, I think we just passed it. So we
Okay.
just approved it.
We don't need to do that. Okay. All right. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Just see no, okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Second. Motion is second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Thanks, gents. So we're on to the treasurer's report. Bruce, you are back on.
Okay, you have 2 documents, one big sheet, which is the manager's report for the month. And that's where we work off of to get some of the numbers I'm getting on the treasurer's report. We normally we get a little bit more information, the cash flow analysis, with the change of consultants. And the fact that we are fairly cash rich now with the amount of money we got from Scott County in our second half levy. We didn't feel a need to have a cash flow analysis. The Sutton Lake project, we have enough money for that, but if you look at it, there's our bank statement, and I cut it off at the end of the month, and then on December 1, we got $824,107 from Scott County, that's our second half levy, which was about $40,000 more than we had estimated, so that's good news. Everything else, the FEMA payment, I believe that's still the amount, and maybe you probably check that. If you do find anything different, let me know. And we did get paid that other amount. I showed that tonight, $177,000 we did in October. We got paid from FEMA. So looking at the expenditures that remain to be spent based on this budget sheet here, it's like $566, but $177,000 probably paid next year because that's Sutton Lake. If you look at Sutton Lake project, quite a bit of that money is in here for 2020, but I don't think we're going to be spending any of that money in 2020, other than going to be engineering. So that will carry over into 2021, and
that's not accounted, sorry, I'm pausing you there.
Yeah.
So that's not accounted. So that will end up being on top of this, or that's?
No, that's being moved. You see the money to be paid in 100.
Which one do you have?
And future expenditure.
Oh, there, the 177.
Yeah,
I see it.
not in
Yep.
this.
I'm
It's
tracking.
being accounted for next.
Gotcha.
So there, our cash flow right now, then at the very bottom, there was a little bit of permit deposits that we had paid to Heselton. So basically, we're 1.12 million. Too good, we're projecting at the end of the year. So budget wise, we're doing good. And if we get the FEMA money, we're real good. So
When we get the FEMA, let's do that.
yeah, but I mean, that should probably be next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Awesome.
But other
Thanks,
than that,
Bruce.
we're doing good.
Any questions of our treasurer? Seeing none, then we are moving on to any manager presentations on water related items. Anybody have anything else, Steve?
Yeah, the public is watching this. We always welcome people to the Citizens Advisory Committee. They are residents who provide input and recommendations to the board on project reports and prioritization, and act as a primary interface for the board to address the current issues of concern to local citizens. So the Citizens Advisory Committee meets the last Thursday of the month at 6:30 City Hall. This month they'll be meeting virtually on the 10th. So always welcome new CAC members.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna, anybody else on manager updates? Bruce?
Just one, I don't know if it's interest anybody, but on the P-lock, I see where the city has got to be awarded a bid on the Big Bridge Creek. They're gonna be moving the channel and doing a bunch of these things down there. I think it's like $3.3 million. So that project will be happening this winter and spring.
Correct.
So
And with that, upcoming meetings, since you've already noticed the CAC one, I'm not gonna add anything else, but the PLOC, the Prior Lake Outlet Channel Cooperators meeting has been canceled for December 10th, simply because we didn't have any items that we needed to really get together to vote on. So there was, digitally, there will be an exchange, just updates on some of the stuff going on. And new meetings set for the new year. So that's about it for upcoming meetings. With that, our favorite motion of the day, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Steve, second. Motion second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. 5-0, Frank.
I'm not